You know that you have to model the behavior that you want others to follow, period. End of story, shut the book, right? Mic drop type situation there. This is pretty important. You can do all the other things, but if you yourself don't walk the talk, people are going to assume that that's how they need to respond. People they get energized when they share stories about what they did while they disconnected. And it's because they disconnected. That flexibility is important. When something comes up, how does your organization adapt? How does your team adapt? Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to today's episode. Have you moved into a remote or virtual environment for work? And this just doesn't mean working from home. It could mean you're still reporting to an office, but now your team is virtual. Could be spread across the United States. It could be spread in a global environment. And what that does is it begins to blur those lines between our personal lives and our work lives. When work life starts to bleed into personal life, we see things like employee disengagement. We see satisfaction start to go down because it always feels like we're at work. And even if you are working from home, I got into the point where I was answering emails like at 8 o'clock at night because I was working in my office doing other things, my home office, and my work computer would go off, or I'd hear a ding, or my phone would go off, and I didn't think anything of it. I'd pick it up and answer those texts. So if that is you, in this episode, we're going to unpack 3 strategies to keep healthy boundaries so those lines don't become blurred. Let's get into the content today. In this first one, and it seems simple, these things aren't revolutionary. They're practical examples of things that I've implemented with my own teams. I've helped leaders and businesses implement with their teams. And these are things that are common sense. They're just not common practice. And as leaders, we forget that. As business owners, we get busy in the day-to-day and we tend to forget what works. It's nobody's fault. That's just what happens. We get busy and out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, right? These things start falling. And now what we're doing is we're getting into, 10-hour work days or 12-hour work days. And it's not our fault. It's not our employees' fault. But as leaders and as business owners, these types of things can be resolved with just this first strategy, setting clear expectations. Now, what are expectations? Expectations create clarity. And there's 3 areas that I want to tap into or talk about when we talk about setting expectations around boundaries for your work-life balance. 1, roles. What roles? And then 2, what responsibilities? Those 2 can be combined. Do you have at work if you are working virtually, if you are working at a remote location, and especially if you're spanning across multiple time zones, because that's another layer of complexity that I didn't speak of in the introduction, but it becomes crucial, especially if you're East Coast time. The world revolves around, at least here in the United States, East Coast time. Well, what about our West Coasters? That means for a 7 a.m. meeting, they're waking up 3 hours earlier than that. So that's 4 o'clock that they are waking up to attend meetings. Is that fair? I don't know about you all, but I'm not ready at 4 o'clock to have difficult conversations or be productive. So these are the things around clarity. What are the roles? What are our responsibilities when it comes to working virtually? And then the third one around clarity is availability. What is your availability? Going back to that 7 a.m. meeting on the East Coast, how are you impacting others in other time zones? So clarity is important when we start with communication of those expectations around remotely sited work, maybe virtual work, or just virtual office work. So what are some applications? How can we address this role, maybe unclarity or responsibilities not really being well defined and those expectations of availability not being set? We do that in a charter. My background is in project management. So every time we would kick off a project, what would we do? We'd create a charter. Now it seems daunting, like charter is a big word. I don't want to do a charter. What's that all about, John? I thought this was supposed to be easy and practical tactics. Just listen to me here. A charter only sets those expectations, so it puts everything on paper. Have you ever played the telephone game where you hear something and then you go and tell somebody else and the message changes a little bit? So by the time 10 people have heard The message, it's changed quite a bit. A charter is a place where we can go back and we can say, okay, what are the roles that we all agreed upon when it comes to virtual work or when it comes to availability? Any one of those things can be defined in the charter, and you don't have to call it a charter if it's too fancy for you. You can call it just guidelines or expectation document, whatever. The gist of what I'm saying here is get it down on paper, document it. It can be out there in a digital form, maybe on a site that everybody can go to, but it allows everybody to agree. And I want everybody, when I mean agree, we hold a meeting and we go around the room and we say, okay, what we've defined here, roles, responsibilities, and availability, is it clear enough? Where may be confusion? Does everybody understand? And you go and you actually, this is how I do it and this is how I coach it. You go around the room and you get a concurrence from everybody. That way, and it's not like to be preschool or elementary school style, but what it does is it gets everybody to at least, one, pay attention, especially in a virtual environment, and two, it just gets their concurrence. And that way, if they do have, a lot of times the questions will come up. If I have to verbally say, yes, I agree, I'm more likely to ask questions, especially if I don't understand. So prime reason why a charter is a good idea, and then you go around the room or you go around your virtual meeting and get concurrence from everybody. The other one, digital tools. So we have several digital tools out there, and depending on your platform, whether it's Microsoft or, whatever, Google, each platform though has availability indicators. And these things can, when used in the right way, they can really be of value. When we first got into a virtual kind of workspace, a virtual work environment, people would use the indicator. It would be green for like active. It meant you were doing something. Or they would use yellow as you're away. And then I think there was like an X for, you've logged off or something like that. So during the day, if you weren't green, the expectation was, and this was an unclear expectation because we would call people out and we never stated it anywhere. We never put it in a charter, but if you weren't green, means you weren't working. Well, that necessarily wasn't the case, because if you were on a meeting and you were talking and you engaged in the conversation, you weren't touching your mouse or your keyboard. Of course, just the activity or the lack of activity would put you to yellow. Does that mean that you are not working? Heck no. So when we talk about digital tools and the way that we can identify availability, let's think smarter, not harder here. When you're in a meeting, there is an indicator that you're in a meeting. That's a clear indicator, especially if you are in a screen sharing mode. When you're in a screen sharing mode, that is like my time that I'm not available. I can't answer IMs. I can't answer a phone call, especially if I'm screen sharing. I'm using double superpower, walking and chewing gum at the same time. So I don't bother people. When I see that indicator, and it's a very clear indicator in the system that we use, no communication at all. And we've set that clear expectation. If you are going to be away, if you got to run an errand, if you got to do something, then put a step away indicator. That way, I don't misjudge that yellow stoplight for you're in a meeting. I know that you're away, and I can simply send an email or a message when you get back. This can wait till the morning. We'll talk a little bit about boundaries, especially sending late emails or messages after we've already set those clear boundaries. But these are ways that we can use digital tools to help with our availability. I know some tools will even indicate if you bounce around offices, you're a remote worker, something like that, you can put in your location. So depending on if you're traveling to different sites, people may see that you're in their area and request an in-person meeting versus doing a virtual meeting. And those in-person meetings, they're gold to me. I always like, if I'm in the vicinity of somebody and we can meet in person, that's my preference. For some people, it's not their preference, but it's an excellent way for these boundaries to be set with clear expectations. Okay, so that's the first strategy. The second strategy that I journaled this morning, and this one right here, I harp on this over and over again. And if you've been listening to the podcast for any time whatsoever, you know that you have to model the behavior that you want others to follow, period. End of story. shut the book, right? Mic drop type situation there. Try it on. I want to take a quick break from the episode today to talk about a couple things. The first thing, less than 40% of our listeners are subscribed to our channel. You would be doing me a huge favor if you click on that subscribe button. It helps us grow our Go Be Great community and get this podcast out to as many people as we possibly can. The second thing, are you a small business owner that is drowning in the day-to-day operations? You're delegating tasks and you're still doing all the work. You're experiencing a high turnover. Maybe you don't have the systems and processes in place that you need to run a successful business. I invite you to go over to thejohnespinosa.com, fill out the form to see if you're the right fit. Now back to the episode. We're going to talk about here is it starts with you, like modeling boundaries that you want not only your team. Remember, we're trying to prevent burnout here. We're trying to prevent overwork. And if we ourselves are modeling bad things, we're answering emails late or we're sending emails late, guess what? Like, even though we don't put it in a charter and we don't make sure it's a clear expectation, it'll be an assumed expectation. And here's a story. This is how I know this is true. I have a work phone and I do have the tendency, or I used to have the tendency, of answering back emails after hours, after I'd already left the office, after, virtual office or physical office. And I didn't think anything of it. Well, we were in a team meeting and we got to talking. And the comment was made, I said, when you are away from the office, you're away. You drop all your electronics, you leave your computer, you don't take your phone on you with vacation. When you're with your family, when you're with your significant other, when you're with yourself, after work hours, that is you time. That is self-care time. Well, somebody on my team called me out. Said, well, John, you don't do that. Last week, you answered an email, at 10 p.m. Well, true. The moral of the story here is they felt like they had to do that after hours because I did it after hours. So model the behavior yourself. It starts with you. You want to cultivate balance and retention. The way we do that as leaders and as business owners, we do it ourselves. And I say this, sometimes it gets me in trouble. You work hard to play hard. And in order to play hard, you got to be off the clock. So this piece right here, and we'll talk about some applications, this is pretty important. You can do all the other things, but if you yourself don't walk the talk, people are going to assume that that's how they need to respond. Okay, so applications. Announce your disconnect hours. Sometimes we have flexible schedules and schedules have to flex. I get it. Your schedule may have to flex, right? Especially if you're dealing with people in multiple time zones. But put those disconnect hours in your status or, put them somewhere where, just like I mentioned, the indicator that means that you're away, you're out of your computer. There's no way that you're going to be reached, or an email. And I know that some people do auto reply, that it says, hey, I'll be back. I'm gone for the day. I'll be back in the morning at 7 a.m. or whatever time they're coming back. But make sure that you publish those disconnect hours. Very important. And then hold yourself accountable and hold others accountable for it. If somebody answers or responds to something during those disconnect answers, don't call them out, but hold them accountable. Say, hey, listen, the other day, I noticed that you replied to an email during our disconnect hours. Let's try during those disconnect hours. That's your self time. Take that time for yourself. Okay. Very important. Then another one, avoid sending after hour comms. It's very simple. Again, all of these are really common sense. They're just not common practice. It's easy for us, especially me. My brain never turns off. And I'm sure most of you out there, some of you are like that. You just think about things and you want to capture them and you want to send it. Don't do it. Capture them, get them down, put them in your notes. You may even write a draft email and then leave it in your draft folder. The next morning, check your draft folder and send out all those emails that you thought about sending, right? Again, if you begin to get in the habit of doing that after hours, that communication, they're going to, I promise you, your teams are going to get in the habit of like, John does it. It's okay if I do it. Or they're going to think that that's the expectation. So avoid sending after hour comms, and then share stories of self-care. This is I've recently started doing this, and I've recently started coaching on this, and it allows vulnerability, and it allows you to be seen as a person and not just a robot leader, boss type person. And what this does though, is it opens up other stories of self-care. So it perpetuates. Like you get momentum by disconnecting. I love it. People energize. They get energized when they share stories about what they did while they disconnected. And it's because they disconnected. Back to the whole entire premise, or the reason why I'm talking about this today, is it prevents burnout. It increases retention. Like when people realize that they can disconnect from work, they're going to be happier. And that happiness is going to, in turn, want them to stay longer and even recruit people to come work for your organization because they're like, this organization truly respects work-life balance. Work-life balance used to be, oh, you get free food in the cafeteria, or I got a nice spot for you to go sit. Right? No, now it's like truly disconnecting from work. Very important. Share those stories. They're powerful. Stories sell, okay? Stories sell people on the fact that what you are trying to either get across, what you're trying to model, that's what needs to be done. Very powerful application. I love that one. I'd like to see somebody, if you've practiced that or if you have experience, put down in the comments. Share your experience. With any of these, if you got questions, put it down in the comments. Let's engage. I want this to be an interactive podcast. Again, I got my journal out. Get your journal out. Put this stuff in notes. Because the challenge, as always, with all of our podcasts, put one of these in application. Put one of these to practice today. Don't wait. Do it today. The last one we're going to talk about, empowerment. Empowerment through flexibility. And this is what separates organizations that people want to come work for. Raise your hand out there if anybody's life is so predictable that you never have anything outside of what you've planned happen. Hopefully nobody's hands out there are raised, because I know my life's not like that. Just today, I had an appointment come up and I had to step away from the office for a couple hours. And guess what? I was able to do that because I set those boundaries and we created a culture of if I'm gone, the operation goes on, right? But that flexibility is important. When something comes up, how does your organization adapt? How does your team adapt? Now, some of the things that we're going to talk about, and this can be flexible boundaries. They can boost productivity. People get more done just for the simple fact that if something comes up, they know if they're in the middle of something and they got a timeout or pause on something, they can come back to it later, okay? It also boosts satisfaction, and we talked about retention. All of these things you're going to see go up as we build in these boundaries. People think of boundaries as rigid and like rules. I was talking to somebody and he said, well, boundaries are rules, right? Yeah, if you want to call them rules, but if you call them rules, rules have a negative connotation. Who needs, rules, right? Rules are made to be broken. So I call them boundaries, and we discuss them in that very simple way. And flexibility to those boundaries adds that additional just work-life balance piece. So what are some things that you can do? One, this is, again, one of those things that as we as bosses, we get busy. We as business owners, we as leaders, we get busy and we forget that putting in 8 hours a day doesn't mean that you're doing work. I have went into organizations and I have worked with people in the past. True story. 8 hours a day didn't mean that they were getting anything done. Didn't mean productivity went up just because they put in 8 hours a day. Okay? So in this example here, where we talk about flexibility, as business owners, as leaders, and as bosses, we need to emphasize productivity over hours. I always tell the story and I equate this to going to the dentist. I despise going to the dentist. So if I'm going to the dentist and I can get that over with in 30 minutes and get still the same level of service rather than sitting in the chair an hour, guess what I'm going to pick? 30 minutes. Am I going to get charged less? Heck no. But I'll take 30 minutes any day over 60 minutes, especially in that dentist chair. That's what we're talking about here. They got the same level of work done. I got the same service. Everything was the same except for the time. So if we begin to emphasize productivity, getting things done rather than hours, working 8 hours, got to work your 8 hours no matter what you get done in that 8 hours. You see where this goes? What we emphasize is going to be what they think is important. What we measure is going to get what's tracked. So if they think they just got to put in 40 hours a week, yeah, projects can slip. Well, I put in my 40 hours or every other Friday, right? I get paid every other Friday. When you start to hear that as a leader, the hair in the back of my neck is standing up right now. What are you doing? How productive are you in those 40 hours? Measure that. Okay? Very important. Structure days around peak performance. I just started doing this, and I started doing it personally with my meetings, and I've coached a couple folks to do this, and the feedback that I've gotten is very positive. So here's where I'm going with structured days around peak production. There are certain times in the day, and that you get things done. Maybe in morning, maybe afternoon, maybe in the evening. Whatever those peak times are, that's where you're going to work. Now, I say that some businesses, some operations they have to be ran in core hours. So there's certain hours that you got to be in the office or you got to be engaged. I get that. Outside of that, where are your peak times? And bulk your work there. Put whatever important tasks you got to do in those particular times. It's a game changer. It's been a game changer for me. It's added value. It's made productivity for me go up. And what it also has done, I've modeled that, and I've begun to see employees' calendars start to change. Where we used to have, lulls or gaps, guess what? That was their on time. That's when they were at their peak kind of mental state. And this may change over time, but recognize those times. And I've seen our meetings getting rescheduled or things getting done. Or even how they, if it's a team environment, the team members will even feed off each other during those peak times. Somebody likes to go first. They're okay. They like to jump in and start talking. Some other team members may sit back and, have to process. And then they jump in. But understand that from a team dynamics, group dynamics, and it starts with you as the leader, as the business owner, as the boss, recognize that. And then, refine how you support individual needs. So this goes back to just flexibility 101. Life happens. Situations happen. We go through seasons of life where things just aren't on. How can we be flexible for ourselves? Starts with us. And then how can we be flexible to our team to allow them to, again, set those boundaries and still be productive? So the challenge here, take one of these strategies and I challenge you. This is another challenge. I want you to share your experiences. I want you to share your insights in the comments. Let's start engaging. Let's start a two-way communication, a community. We talk about the Go Be Great community. Let's share ideas. We are better together. So let's share those ideas. Put them in the comments. If you're not subscribed to the channel, that's your first task. Subscribe to the channel. You're not going to want to miss any of the episodes. We're going to continue on boundaries. We started with remote work, virtual teams, and we're just going to keep going this season. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.